What's up, everybody? We'll be starting here in just a little bit. Just going to share this on a couple pages. What's up, everybody? We'll be starting here in just a little bit. What's up, Brent? Think you're new to the party. Guys, if this is your first time here, jump out and say hi. Let us say hi to you. All right, starting here in just a minute. What's up, Matt? Thanks, Kim. I appreciate that. Yeah, it feels good to be back. I will definitely say that. And it's nice to know that they're out there, people listening, and we've gotten a ton of feedback and comments from people. And I think people are just excited to have it back. So yeah, for those of you guys that are in fact listening to our podcast and enjoying it, if I can make a personal request that you actually go to, whether you're listening to it on iTunes or Stitcher, that you go to whatever you're listening to, obviously subscribe first and foremost so you get the episodes as soon as they come out. But if you could leave a comment and a rating, that helps us increase the viewership on the podcast. And obviously the idea is to transform 100 million people's lives. So would love to have you help us with that. Hey, Michelle. Brent, what was the oops for? All right, cool. So we got a few people here. So just so you guys know, I'm actually solo today. Guy is literally in the middle of the jungle in Costa Rica, having himself hopefully quite an incredible experience. So, hey, what's up, Tori? So I'm going to do this solo. We'll just give it another minute here for people to drop in. So yeah, it'll be exciting. I have something pretty personal to share with you guys today that I think should give you some interesting insight, not only to me, but also, this is so interesting. So I shared this on my wall, and I have people like Bob and Chad on my wall posting comments instead of here at SatoriPrime. And it's actually like I got like a little pop-up screen next to it so I can see your comments there too. Interesting. So it's like a picture-in-picture I get to see myself. All right, so I look the way I look, by the way, right now because I just literally completed a workout and Tony Horton from Beachbody kicked my ass. So if I'm a little sweaty and winded, that is because of that. All right, so let's jump right in. And I want to share with you guys a personal story so you guys understand, like when we're talking about this, right? When we're talking about have it all, I want you guys to understand that Guy and myself are at this the same way that you guys are. This is not something that we've reached some pinnacle of our understanding or where we are as human beings. We are just as much playing the game in the muck with you. So for those of you that are on here who know me personally and maybe have met my wife or have been at a live event with us, then you are aware of the relationship that I have with my wife. You may have listened to our podcast or things like that. I have a pretty spectacular relationship with her. amazing kids, amazing friends, all of that kind of stuff. And having said all that, I want you to understand that I'm always consistently looking forward to on how I can actually improve that relationship. So I'll give you an example. When Michael Jordan was the #1 basketball player in the NBA, he didn't stop practicing. In fact, he practiced even harder. He built himself a full court basketball court in his house so he could practice. Right now, by any stretch of measure or anything like that, he was literally the #1 player. No one could touch him. And yet he was always seeking for ways to improve. Tiger Woods, after winning the Masters by something like 18 or 19 strokes, I don't remember exactly, got himself a new coach and completely trained for a new stance, a new grip, a new swing. And most people would be like, that's absolutely crazy. And yet here he was doing it. So my relationship is pretty epic by most standards. And yet I'm always looking for ways on how I could be more in love, how I could show more love. Hey, Stanislava. How we can be more connected. Not from a standpoint of there is anything wrong here. Or not from a standpoint of there's something to fix or something is broken or something needs to be changed. I hope you guys understand that. And if you don't understand this distinction, let me know. Like, this is really, really important. So just let me know. Like, do you understand what I'm talking about? Just how do you continuously look for optimizations? How do you continuously look for, okay, just because you reach a certain level of success financially or certain love and connection doesn't mean that there's another layer. Just like for those of you guys here, you know, that have done personal development work or have done personal development work with us, you know that most of the time you actually deal with the same thing over and over. Just because you've dealt once with, you know, your need to be accepted or need to be loved or you're unworthy or I'm not good enough story doesn't mean that it's done with forever. Right? Another circumstance or another instance will happen, and that instance will be able to show you yet another layer. It's almost like when you're climbing up a mountain. Yes, the view from the bottom is technically the same view. You're looking at the same thing, and yet as you keep moving up that mountain, it's a completely different view. So I had an instance with my wife a few days back. And I want to share with you a few really, really important lessons that I gained from it that I think are important to understand in every single relationship, not just intimate relationships. So I'm heading to Colombia on March 4th of this year, and I'll be going for about 9 days. Now, keep in mind, 9 days for me, with my wife and a 5.5-year-old and 4-year-old. She's turning 4 in 2 days. That's a lot to leave a person that you love and adore to handle, right? So we worked all of that out. We have a really open, honest communication. Like before I even booked the trip, we made sure that everything was lined up and that everything would be taken care of. Now, as the trip got closer, I could sense, and you guys, like, how many of you guys are in a conversation with someone or a circumstance or relationship with someone, and there's this feeling inside, and sometimes you listen to it and sometimes you don't, but there's a feeling inside like, I know they're not pleased with me right now, or I know they're not saying something to me maybe that they want to say to me, right? How many of you guys have that experience? And most of the time, we don't listen to it, right? We just shake it off as like, I'm just reading into this too much or anything like that. Well, what I've basically started doing to myself, and I have this posted here on my wall, so I want you guys to see it, I started learning to sink into the feeling. I hope you guys can see that. So what do I mean by that? I mean, trust the feeling. Our body is our first line of communication. By the time you've experienced emotion, by the time that emotions become thought, and by the time those words have come out of your mouth, you are now 3 levels above where the initial jolt of communication actually occurred. So think about that. We tend to live in a society where we think about everything. We how to about everything. We linearly, wow, that's a tough word to say. We linearly want to understand the path of things. And I made a video about this. Like, what if all of that is wrong? What if the whole thing is feel into things and use that as your judge, right? So I feel this thing, okay? Oh, Mark, this is such a great point. So I just want to read out what Mark said. So he wrote, I hear it and ask, but sometimes she's not looking for an answer and shrugs it off, which I absolutely understand. So I'm going to kind of talk about that today. That was the whole point of this thing. So I could sense, right? I could sense that there's some uneasiness. Not that she's unhappy with me or mad at me, just an uneasiness. Now, I'm telling you that for me, my modus operandi from a very, very young age is when I felt, or when I used to feel, that there was this tension in the air, I would shut down. Or I would do the exact opposite and try to overcompensate by trying to show like how great things were, which is also a weird thing to do, right? So now I know this about myself, and I know my wife, obviously. And so instead of avoiding that, I fall right into it. And I don't mean fall right into it as like falling on a sword. I mean like lean into this thing. Because now when I feel these things in my body, what I've converted it to is that this is an opportunity for growth. And I don't want you guys to think that I go into these and I'm like hunky-dory, super comfortable. No, it is still very uncomfortable. Everything in my being is like, shut the fuck up, run the other way, avoid this like the plague. I really want you guys to understand that. And I've gone through it to the other side enough times to understand that if it's not handled now, at some point, you guys all understand that at some point, you have to handle it, right? And at first, it might be this big, but like if it's unhandled and we kind of do that like sweep under the rug shit, at some point is the volcano. And it's much harder to stop a volcano than to deal with things as they come. So, the conversation started something like this. My wife tells me that she feels, because I said something at dinner with my parents about going to Colombia and we're going to be doing ayahuasca for several days. And after my parents left, she said, you know, I feel really misled. And I feel like you've basically told me that this Colombia trip was very different than what it's actually going to be, and that you knew the whole time what it's going to be. Okay. That was what she said. Now, there's 2 options that you have. And for anyone that's dated anyone, here's what I want you to think about. There's the thing that people say, and there's the things that people are afraid to say, which are usually the things that are actually bothering them. Okay? So as men, and I'm calling myself out on this, and thank you, Tori, by the way, for saying that. And by the way, like, I personally, just as a side note, believe that vulnerability is the most powerful thing that we as human beings possess. And for any of you guys that have been around Guy and I or SatoriPrime, you know that for us, We will always share this stuff with you. Why? Because I want you to know that we are going through it too. My life is not hunky-dory, rainbows and roses and fucking unicorns shitting ice cream. It's not. It's real. I have relationships just like you have relationships. I have kids. I get upset. I get frustrated. I get mad. All of it. I'm a human being. I just have tools and systems in place that allow me to navigate through that stuff in a very powerful and very, very fast way. So just a side note. So now I can deal with what came out of her mouth, okay? Or I can start investigating and digging as to what the actual concern is. Because as men, what we tend to do is we deal with what's in front of our face. But there's a root cause to that. Okay, we can deal with the she believes that she got deceived part. And we did. We had a conversation about it. I actually reached out to the people organizing the trip. And I was like, look, baby, I don't know anything more than what I told you. I know that I'm going to the jungle. I know we're going to be doing a bunch of different whacked out spiritual stuff like DNA activation and body healing and ayahuasca and maybe DMT. And like, that's all I know. There's no itinerary when we get out there. And so as we were talking, I was like, look, I took out my phone. I messaged the person that was heading it up and literally got a paragraph from them saying pretty much the same thing that I just told her. So we got past that. But look, I could have left it at that. Okay. That's the point. I could have left it as I told you so. I didn't deceive you. Da, 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 da. But I know that that's not the thing. That's the first thing, but that's not the real thing. And so we started investigating. And this is the part that I really, really want, or I would love for you guys to hear and take on. Because if you want juicy, sexy, massively connected relationships in your life, you have to understand that as a human being, and think for yourself, when you're upset about something, the thing that comes out of your mouth is very rarely the thing that actually bothers you. Because the thing that actually bothers you, you're pretty afraid to actually voice it. Because some of the times you hear it in your head and you're like, man, that really bothers me. And then this other voice in your head goes, if you're, someone who actually thinks about things before they say things, the next thing comes out of your mouth, you're like, wow, but that's so ridiculous. Like, I can't say that to them. I know that's ridiculous. And you won't, and you'll stop yourself from saying it. And so what happens is something happens and you react, and you normally react in kind of like a almost nasty way because you're trying to conceal the thing that is actually the thing. How many of you guys I just want to check in. How many of you guys are with me? Like, is this making sense to you? Okay. Well, I think we're on quite a bit of a delay here. Okay, cool. All right. So now I'm like, okay, clearly there's something afoot and I have a choice. We always have a choice. My choice is I could either prove my point, right? We handled that first thing that you said. I could be done and it could be over. Choice. Nothing wrong with it. Choice. I'm not committed to that. This is what I'm committed to. I'm committed to having it all. I'm committed to having the juiciest of relationships. And I know that if I don't dig, I don't get this. So I start asking questions. And while we're in bed and having this continued conversation, again, I just want you to get in my body, physically uncomfortable. everything wants to be like, Ilan, just shut up and let this go. Everything, my voice, my body. No, not what I'm committed to. So here's basically, after questions and this and that, here's what we came to. My wife's fear, the underlying fear of all of this, was that I'm going out to do, I've been obviously on a journey since 2003. So we're talking 14 years, right? And more so recently, it's just gotten faster and maybe a little more obscure in the way that we're looking at things, from, gene keys and DNA activation to plant medicines and retreats and all of this other stuff, right? And her get this, the little girl inside of her was afraid that as I keep doing these things, we're going to grow apart. Because I'm going to put myself on this journey and she's not. Yeah, like Mark said, I'm going to change to the point that we're going to drift apart. Now, something that I learned from my coach is that when we get triggered, the person that's getting triggered is not even you. It's not the adult version of you. It's that little child, that little 5, 6, 7-year-old child who was made wrong or was abandoned at the supermarket, or like me at 3 years old, my parents went out to dinner. I happened to wake up. No one was in the apartment. I thought they left me forever. That leaves scars, and that creates you as a certain human being. So when she said that, right, I could be like, and again, I want to give you, it's all choice, right? One thing is a super normal response could have been, are you crazy? Are you serious? Why would that ever happen? What does that have to do with anything, right? And think about that. When you respond that way, what are you doing? You're basically making the other person's mega big concern, which to them is very, very real. You just completely squash it and make them feel like anything that they're feeling is absolute bullshit, irrational, and is not even worth a second. Right? Now, I don't know how many of you guys have kids, but if you did that to a kid, that's not going to go over that well. That doesn't help them. That doesn't soothe them. That doesn't make you closer. That doesn't alleviate any of their fear. So something that I've taken on is, I know that when I talk to my kids, I bring a whole world of compassion. Right? When you know that this being, or even pets, right? They don't know any better. You're like, aw. So in my head, I'm going, aw, that 6-year-old little girl is afraid that we're going to grow apart. And I could really get that. Right? More than that, I could get how my actions, my words, my behavior is responsible for triggering that. You guys get that? I can say that she's crazy and it's her and blah, blah, blah. Or I can, in that moment, take responsibility for having created an experience for my wife such that she has that reaction. Now, which do you think gives me more power in the situation? Blaming her, thinking that she's irrational, or actually taking responsibility for how I'm responsible for her having that experience? Because it really is just that. It's an experience in the moment, an experience. It's not an experience of the whole relationship. It's an experience in the moment. Now we know what we're dealing with. Now we got to that underlayer of the thing. And could you get how that concern of growing apart is the trigger for the original conversation of, You deceived me. Do you get how those two beautifully tie together? So as a coach, what's made Guy and I amazing at coaching people in a one-on-one setting is that ability to hear not the question or the words coming out of your mouth, but what's behind those things at a subconscious level that's actually triggering the conversation that you're having. And because of that, I was able to do this. So now once that was out, right? And for her, you want to get like, that's not easy to say. We've been married now for 8 years. We're going to be celebrating. Yeah, we just celebrated 8 years in this past November. So you get like, even for her to think that thought, and she must have been going, wow, that's crazy. I can't believe I'm thinking that. And it was real for her. So now we can deal with it. And now there's work to be done. Okay. So a couple of things that you can do for yourself, you can do for others. And this is just an exercise that we did. I always like to go to, there's a lot of stuff that this monkey brain or whatever we want to call it says all the time. Just grab a sip of water. There's a lot of things this thing says. Okay. But sometimes it's not grounded in anything based in reality. It's not grounded in, I don't want to call them facts because I don't know what facts are, but like it's not grounded in your life experience. So the first thing I said to her, I was like, look, is that absolutely true? I've been at this since 2004. There's courses you've taken with me. There's things you haven't taken with me. I've taken plant medicines. You haven't like there's things that I've done and we've done separately. Has anything that I've done thus far done anything but bring us closer together? Has any experience that I've done on my own actually made our relationship harder? Or have all of those things made me a better husband, a better father, a better son, a better human being? And when you start looking at, okay, well, what is my actual life experience? Then quickly she realized that, yeah, obviously it has. And I'm telling you guys right now, the people that are listening, like the reason the Guy and I are going to be in a jungle for a week has very little to do with us. Very little. It has to do with the 100 million people that we're trying to reach. It has to do with the global movement that we're looking to create. I know the only thing in the way of us achieving that is me. And so the faster I can remove the layers in the way of me believing and knowing that that's what's possible and having the tools to know on how to accomplish that in the world, I'm game. I'm game. And it's the reason that yes, I might be scared or nervous or whatever, but I'm never worried about what's going to happen. I know all of this stuff is here to serve me. And even if my experiences, like even with my wife, I'm telling you, it wasn't a pleasant experience. And I know that it's here to serve me. I know that even going through that is here to serve me. Right? So we have that whole conversation. We go to bed. Our number one rule is we don't go to bed angry or upset at each other. Absolutely under no fucking circumstances. Right? So we complete the conversation to the best of our ability, wake up the next day, and we're good. We're good. And it's just still playing in my mind, right? Like I still feel like this thing in my body and this residue in my body. So I start talking to my brother, I start talking to my coach. And what I realized that's missing, and for those of you guys, I know Mark Mark's on here. He's done some landmark work with me. But for those of you guys that have done landmark, this language might sound familiar to you. But what I realized is that we haven't together as a partnership recently created a clear vision and a future that we're both aligned to working towards. You know, like when we met, we created it. We had like the goal of being engaged, the goal of getting married, the goal of buying a house, the goal of having kids, the goal of raising amazing kids, which we obviously still do, and it's really important to us. Goal of going on X amount of vacations, goal of helping me build my business, all of these things. And now it's like things are great. And we just kind of stopped creating like, what's the next thing? And I just kind of realized, okay, that's what's really missing. And so Saturday night, instead of just watching a movie or hanging out and just chilling, we actually got into a really, really intense, I'd say 3+ hour conversation. Because what I realized in that conversation when we had in bed, that what came up is an opportunity to deepen our love, understanding, respect for each other, and an opportunity to allow for a whole new level of intimacy and juiciness and connectedness that we've never had before. And while I felt uncomfortable asking the certain questions, and while I felt uncomfortable even during the conversation, like we said certain things to each other in that 3-hour conversation that we've literally never said to each other before. We asked each other things like, what do I do to support you? What are the things that I do that make you the happiest? When do you feel unsupported or unloved? And I don't know that after 8 years of marriage, this is something that a lot of people do. I think we just think we know each other. And I think if you come from a place of that you don't know anything about that person, that allows for something. That allows for a really, really big opening for something. And so that's what we did. And if I were to tell you that we had the best conversation and we came out of it hunky-dory and light and happy and all that stuff, I'd be lying. It got intense. And at times I sat there and I was like, this was the worst fucking idea I've ever had. Ilan, why do you keep going and going after this? And the next day, we woke up, and it wasn't. When I say intense, I didn't mean like we were mad or got heated. I just mean like it was intense. Like hearing this person that you love and adore say things that they've never said to you about how you operate was just like jarring. I mean, there was moments where I would say things to Fanny, and she would just sit there and for 5 minutes just be dead silent. Like you could see the wheels turning and processing, but it was like such a boom. And then the same thing would happen to me. And I was like, oh my God, Ilan, why did you do this? So anyway, we wake up the next day and there's just something different. There's something different in the presence that you have with each other. There's something different in the way that you are aware of what you're doing and not doing. There's a desire and a want to be someone that you didn't even know you could be. And we got that out of a 3-hour conversation that we asked a few questions and let ourselves go there in a way that we haven't in a long, long time. And the reason I'm bringing this up is these are the moments that human beings avoid because it's uncomfortable. Or your ego wants to be quiet and silent and run the other way. And when you buy into it, you're literally giving up gold. And for what? Because a hurt little 5-year-old inside of you is scared to ask a question and hear some answers? Unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So I'm sharing this with you guys today. For a few reasons. One, I want you to understand that I'm doing the work right along with you. This is not some things that we talk about, that we read in a book. Like, this is my life. This literally happened Thursday through Saturday. I'm living in it now. And things are still arising. Each and every one of you, each and every one of us has that opportunity. Are you willing to give up that little voice, or the power of that little voice, for the opportunity of having it all? Are your relationships, is your life worth giving up the uncomfortable, or being with that it's uncomfortable to get to the other side of it? Now, I will tell you this, that for me, even in that moment, like having a coach that I could go to and share that experience and getting a different perspective. I mean, she was one of the ones that was like, look, that was the beginning of the opportunity. What you guys did in bed, amazing, nothing taken away. And it was just the beginning. It was just the opening of the opportunity, not we closed the chapter on that one. And I would have never thought about that. Right? So having people in your life that stand for your greatness, that understand that there's always the next level, right? Because when you're in it, it's really, really hard to get. It was amazing. Absolutely amazing. And like one of the ancillary things that we took on was that we're now committed to, on a monthly basis, exploring together some sort of new growth. So the first thing we took on is we're both going to read a parenting book together, because obviously parenting is something that it's our lives. We love being better parents. And I was like, well, there's really amazing thought leaders in that world. Like, why don't we delve into that, right? Because when you're talking about parenting, it's really like doing inner work. It has nothing to do with them. So it all leads to the same path. It's just, that's what we chose. And now, month in and month out, we're going to explore new things that we can do together to expand our growth and push each other. We set new financial goals. We set new goals for what we want to do traveling wise, what we want to do with her career, what we want to do with my career, all of it. And now we're aligned. And now there's sometimes, I don't know, in relationships, you might feel this way where it's like you're running or sprinting at full speed, and then your partner, because they're unaware of what you're doing, or they just don't understand it, or whatever it might be, it almost feels like they're like the parachute, like when people run with like a parachute tied to their back and you're like sprinting, you're like, I'm not really moving all that fast. And there's other times where they're literally like jet propulsion behind you, pushing you, and you're like, this is just unbelievable, right? So that's what I wanted to do. And that's what we did. So Elaine, you asked a really good question, but don't you both have to get it? I'm not exactly sure what you're saying, so I'm going to answer the version I think you're asking. If it's not, just please, clarify. So one could choose to be responsible for the other person hearing the message exactly the way that you want it to be heard, right? So you could be conscious of the way you speak. That's obviously one level. You could also be conscious of the way that other people are hearing what it is that you speak. That's a whole other level, really, really high level. And so you do check-ins. Like you notice me on the webinar here all the time. Are you guys with me? Does this make sense? So in those conversations, there's constant check-ins to make sure that we're on the same page, to make sure that we both get it, to make sure that we're both aligned and focusing on that thing. So yes, I understand that there are people that you're going to speak to that might not speak a certain language or might not have a certain outlook. Well, just like you would explain to a 5-year-old kid, you'd figure out a way to explain something to them, right? Like my son asks me questions about words all the time. You know, it's really interesting to have to explain words, big words, to a 5-year-old. Sometimes I fumble. I'm like, I have no idea how to explain that to you. But that's the beauty and that's the game. John Black. Oh, what's up, John Black? Parenting books are dangerous. They tell you what their right perspective is. I think everyone's life is just perspective. I mean, this is just perspective. I don't think that what I have to say is necessarily right. I think you take what you take that works. For me, it's always through experience. And it was funny because that was actually one of the big things with our conversations around ayahuasca, was like, how do I know that this is medicine? Or how do I know that this is this? And I'm like, I don't need someone to tell me, or I don't need some science to back that up for me. I experience things and I feel things and I trust this here much more than I trust other things. So to books and things like that, yeah, I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, also there's every child is somewhat different. Things that people have told us, like, this works. I'm like, no, it doesn't. It's the same thing in marketing for us. You know, like things, people always stand up on stage like, I made $7 million doing this one thing. And then you go do that thing and it does nothing for you. Yeah. Because there's a lot of different aspects and things that you can't even fathom or take into consideration. But yeah, I mean, I think books are great for giving you new ideas. Sometimes it's like puts a bunch of different puzzle pieces together. So I enjoy them for that. Yeah, which is what you said next. I should have read that. I should have read that after. You said pretty much the same exact thing. So yeah, guys, that's really what I wanted to share with you today. I really hope you got value from this. I know it's a personal story. Obviously, it's not like, hey, here's this distinction, but it was really fresh in mind and just really, really occurred. So I felt like I also sometimes like to share things. It clarifies for me what I actually just experienced. So again, hope you guys got value from it. Hope you guys choose to maybe take some action in your relationships, maybe in an area that you've missed or kind of felt uncomfortable to go there. My recommendation is go there. And you don't have to figure out the right way to do it. There is no right way to do it. There is just doing it and having the experience to just dance and be uncomfortable and notice and not judge that. And when your commitment is bigger than all that other nonsense, you just do it, right? My commitment is to having a relationship for the ages, really, like truly. I want a relationship that like our light as a unit is so fucking bright that love can transform the world, right? That's my commitment. So could I buy into the weak little 5-year-old who wants to run away and do all that stuff? Yeah, I could. Will that get me to the relationship of the ages? Fuck no. So if something came up, and again, trust your instincts, right? If something came up, if a name of a person came up, if a situation came up during this, right? Like I know I'm talking about my wife, but you maybe you were thinking about your wife or maybe one of your siblings or a parent. It doesn't matter. Notice that and know that showed up for a reason today. And don't just be like, just take that action. like you want to improve your life, it's in the work. It's not in the thinking about the work. I could have done all the work on myself, right? Around, well, how was I being as a husband and this and that? And yet when we worked on it together, it's like, that's the magic. All right. So love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to check out more, find out more, SatoriPrime.com. You want to find out more about our academy, you can head over to youwillhaveitall.com. Come check out our academy. Come be in these kind of conversations with us. Come have the ability to have these conversations and be on the other side where you actually get a new perspective and you actually have a coach that's looking for your greatness. Our academy is growing and it's growing fast, and we'd love to have you on the ride with us. So until we see you guys on Wednesday, which I'm not actually sure if Guy will be there then as well, but Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Till then, create an amazing, amazing week. I would love nothing more than for those of you guys that are here, like I know Tori comes on all the time and Sarah comes on all the time and Stanislava. Like if you heard something here today, go and implement that thing today. I'll bring you guys out on Wednesday, and you could share with everybody the results that you guys have produced. Would love to do that. So until we speak again, have an amazing, amazing day, everyone, and talk to you soon. Love.